World War II propaganda issued by the United States government was heavily impacted by the predominantly Christian religious influence, which was omnipresent throughout the U.S. culture and politics, and can be observed when 1940s newspeak, circulated to the general populace, is juxtaposed to the commonplace religious ideologies of the time. I find all things World War II interesting and find myself spending significant amount of free time on the study of the war. While most of my interest comes from the theaters of operation, the home front, or civilian population and non-military activities within the United States, is very unique. On the home front, there were two distinct sets of activities occurring. Firstly, we had troops training for combat and troops deployed in a combat role defending the country from attack. Secondly, our civilian populace and industrial presence were trying to contend with the various programs, restrictions, and hardships which changed the culture and society of America. Many of these societal impacts are still seen in the country to this day. Through all of the sacrifice and hardship, the government had to maintain morale and support for the war effort. One of the ways this was accomplished was through propaganda. This propaganda was published in many forms. By focusing mostly on posters produced on behalf of the government to utilize against the civilian populace on the home front, Christian influence is evident. Research for this project started by viewing some World War II propaganda posters. The Christian influence in many of these messages is not blatant. In fact, I had a lot of trouble discerning many of the nuances and cues until I began this project and started purposefully looking for it. One research question posed was whether it is possible to find specific denominations present in the messaging studied. This can be answered by substantiating a religious plurality within the U.S. Army and U.S. government, such that denominational specificity is not present in the sampled pieces. Completing this project helped further my understanding of cultural impacts of the war on the home front and illustrated that Christian influence can be found in many more things than meets the eye. One surprising thing I learned during this project was George Orwell's stance on the propaganda studied. He had a greater understanding of the possibilities of its misuse and carried disdain for it. His stances on the subject in 1949 led him to write the novel entitled 1984. After his death, rights to the book were purchased from his widow by the Central Intelligence Agency, who then funded the well-known movie of the same title. Christian themes in World War II propaganda is an illustration of just how deeply the Christian influence saturated this country. These posters were not always created intentionally to have a Christian influence or Christian messaging, yet, through the lens of the artists and the authors, or the understanding of the target audience, the influence is readily apparent.